Welcome to the Red Handophiles for lovers of artist Nick Cave's regular letters where he responds to fans' questions. My dad and I enjoyed the letters so much we decided to create the Red Handophiles Podcast to discuss our thoughts and share it with you. You can read the Red Hand Files at www.theredhandfiles.com or follow the link in the show notes.
Hi everyone, welcome to Red Handophiles once again with myself, Adam Bevan, and
Hannah Bevan.
And Hannah, my daughter. She's not actually in the studio today. She's doing this from her home down Byron Bayway. We're actually going to be doing a double episode today. Red Handophiles will be looking at Nick Cave's The Red Hand Files, issue 208 and 209. Part of the reason for that is because 208 is so darn short. Why don't we just roll right into it, Hannah? Do you want to kick us off with the first of the two issues, 208, question and perhaps even answer? We don't normally read the whole answer, but in this case it might warrant a reading of the...
treat for everyone today.
Yeah.
A full dramatic reading.
Yes, in your best voice.
So, Surav from India has said, "What is your favourite film of all time?" Nick, in response, "Dear Surav, Blonde, full stop, love Nick." And we have a beautiful picture, screen cap from the film, I believe, on Netflix, available to watch.
Yeah.
A little extra plug for you there, Nick.
Yeah. The picture is a picture of the actress, how do you say her name? Ana de Armas? Is that how you say it? She was the actress originally of Central or South American extraction, but a fabulous actress and has come to blonde. So look, there it is. His one-word answer is blonde. How about that? Now, I've already spoken to Hannah previously and asked whether she's watched it yet, to which Hannah confessed,
No.
9, yet. Yeah, so maybe we'll leave this one to me briefly to summarize a little bit some of my thinking around the movie Blonde. One thing, first of all, though, Hannah, is do you think he's just said that Nick Cave has said Blonde because it's a recent addition to some of his film-related work? He and Warren Ellis did the film score for it, which upon listening to it, you can completely hear. It's full of a lot of those stringy, angelic, ghostly vocal tones wound through the movie. Do you think he's just thrown that in there because he's looked at it holistically, like he's enjoyed the whole process and he's involved in it in some way? Old friends, with Brad Pitt being one of the producers. He and Brad have had a piece in a movie together in the past. They're doing an art exhibition together now. Do you think it's about greater connectivity to the film, or do you think the actual film is his favourite? What's your best guess?
This isn't normally my red hot take on things. A bit sinister of me. That's a plug, baby. That is a beautiful, beautiful plug.
Yep.
And maybe a little bit busy on the road this week, he was.
Right.
The tour was coming up,
Yeah.
And...
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Pass it on.
That's not sinister. It's probably... but, there was a little bit of an accusation in there of laziness. Have you been lazy, Nick?
No, not lazy.
No.
You're being a little bit lazy. But it was actually quite good because in the last episode or the one before, he was kind of plugging his book as well. And I was like, yeah, live up those plugs for a bit.
That's true. He did get a little bit tongue-in-cheek about
Yeah.
shameless self-promotion. So this might be a carry-on of that vein. But it's not what I thought. When I watched it as though I were, and I was,
He got you.
gullible. Yeah, I went.
What?
Yep, I went and watched it, and I thought it was a magnificent film, and I raved about it to a bunch of people. Almost everybody's got Netflix, but you ask, have you got Netflix? Yeah, you have to watch Blonde. It was remarkable. And I went through a bunch of becauses, and I didn't get the same feedback from my friends about the film that I experienced. I thought it was, had a lot of really interesting cinematic ideas in there, and I think it's an adaptation from a novel. So there's some fictionalization and dialogue in there that's come out of the book, and I think it's been made before. I had a little look before I watched it in 2000 or something. The book was written, or there was another adaptation of the film, which I haven't seen, also called Blonde, of the book. And yeah, I really was touched by it. Maybe we can talk about the subject matter a little bit with Marilyn Monroe. Yeah, because I think, I'm 53 now. You're in your late 20s, sort of getting there. But in my generation, I think some of those 50s figures like Marilyn Monroe and James Dean, even though they were well before I was born in 1969, they were still had some kind of eminence in popular culture. And their movies still showed up on the Saturday and Sunday matinees when we didn't have on-demand films to watch on, pick a platform to watch films on demand. So their films, I was sort of exposed to these people. Is Marilyn Monroe still relevant in your generation?
What I will actually say, yes, she'll always be iconic, but I think she has laid the foundations of what a modern day celebrity is. There is no Kim Kardashian without Marilyn Monroe. I think she completely, you can actually just put down her fame and that meteoric rise to the way that we see that kind of, that commodification of celebrity.
Yeah. One of her contemporaries.
And
no, go on.
Yeah, I think of her as we've just seen the same thing time and time again. We'll never learn, I don't think, really, about the dangers of that. Like a Kim Kardashian's actually done very well at navigating this space, but an Amy Winehouse, a Britney Spears, who else is there? There's so many you can think of. That was, everyone loved them, built them up, and then got torn apart by the machine.
Yeah, absolutely torn apart. She, married some of the most famous and even notable men in her life. Joe DiMaggio, the sort of probably after Babe Ruth, one of the greatest American baseball players. The playwright with her second marriage, the famous affairs with both John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy, his brother, who were both assassinated. It was, they were chewed up, or she was chewed up and spat out. And you can throw in there, I think what you said about,
do it.
Yeah, maybe that's a really interesting hypothesis that you've got, that she was the first, because certainly there might have been others, but the first one to really skyrocket and be everywhere and kind of be the poster girl of the the GIs probably on their walls as they sat in their beds while they were away from the country, and then you get the birth right along with her of an icon again like James Dean, and a year or two later Elvis Presley emerging. It's almost like part of the whole birth of youth culture and popular culture. Celebrity, the birth of celebrity was, what do you think, viewers, was Marilyn Monroe that important? And is she still important now? Maybe less so, but yeah. In my day, we still had, when I was really little, we had Elton John still writing songs about her with the Goodbye Norma Jean song, but I wonder. All right, well, how about you, Hannah? Favorite film? Why don't we go there?
Certainly. My fave is Spirited Away.
Yeah.
The anime. I can't even remember the name of the director now. But it's actually just one, I've always said it for like years, and I'm not even super sure why I do say that. I think I'm forever discovering new things about it each time I watch it. Keeps giving.
I haven't watched that for yonks, but I think when Japanese anime was soaking into Western culture, you had like Akira that happened in that first wave, which wasn't really kid-friendly, but Spirited Away was actually quite child-friendly. Little kids could watch that. I mean, did you first watch that when you were little? I think so.
Yeah, because I was a Japan freak when I was little.
Yeah, you were a Japanophile.
I recall. I was a Japan freak.
You were a Japan freak. Just as a fun story, I can remember that you wanted to go and do judo. You bought, when you were 5, this little book of Japan and judo, and I took you around to all these different martial arts because I'd been doing some kickboxing and taekwondo since I was a kid, a little bit of boxing. So yeah. I took you around to all these things. We went to judo first, and by the time we came back to judo, you were like, you were so dismissive of everything else along the way, and actually the judo class.
It was guaranteed because it was the only one to do with Japan, though. Yeah. I was so obsessed with Japan.
Yeah. So Spirited Away, I get that. For me, I'm actually wearing, knowing we're doing this episode today, I don't know if that's in screenshot or not, but it's the Bride of Frankenstein, which was starring Boris Karloff, but I've got the Bride. I picked this up actually in the US in Colorado in a thrift store, in an op shop over there. And when I was a kid, there was a fellow on telly that was kind of like the Elvira of Australian, or certainly Adelaide TV, called Deadly Earnest. And there was like a Friday night or Saturday night horror / sci-fi show. And it was all usually the Universal monsters and Godzillas and King Kongs. But that movie with the screaming Bride of Frankenstein sort of stayed with me, and it had such an impact. It's still one of my favorites, but I think it might be pipped by Mad Max. And also because my dad, and therefore it's built on maybe Enter the Dragon or Way of the Dragon. I have a three-way tie between Mad Max, Bride of Frankenstein, and what was the third one I just said? Anyway.
Enter the Dragon.
Enter the Dragon. Yeah. So that's me. Okay. Well, there's some thoughts on Blonde. Hannah, a little skeptical. I did watch it. Take some time, viewers. Go and have a look and see what you think. I loved it. Now.
Or don't like me.
Yeah. Now let's move on to the next episode, or the next issue from the Red Hand Files, issue 209. I'll read the question from, this one comes from Justin at Fall River, Massachusetts in the United States. Justin has said, I recently learned that there is a sitting Supreme Court Justice here in the United States who is a fan of a musician I love. This musician has passed. The justice, in my opinion, is dangerous to this country and holds views I abhor. I firmly believe, through public knowledge of this artist, that he was not supportive of the justice either. I feel like this man, whom I loathe, is singing along and dancing to music that wasn't created for him. Funnily enough, it feels like a real injustice. Do you believe your music is created for everyone? Are you okay with the idea that people you might genuinely see as despicable are fans of yours? How do you feel about the fact that they listen to the words and music you work so hard on, that you put all of your soul into, and claim a personal ownership of it? Does it feel like a betrayal of the art you toiled over? Thank you so much for the music. Wow, Justin. Big one. Okay.
Go for it, Justin.
Yeah. What say ye, Hannah, to that question from what you've read of Nick's response?
When I first read the question, I was actually really intrigued from an artist's point of view, whether you feel like some people are deserving and some people are not. So I was very intrigued by the answer of it. And to jump into Nick's answer, his first line is, I've racked my brains to think of someone who is undeserving of my music, but no matter how hard I try, I can't bring anyone to mind. Perhaps I've just grown old and fuzzy and can no longer summon that flaming energy of outrage I remember from my youth. And I love that. Sets the tone. Because at the core of music is just a deep, maybe this is me getting too wishy-washy and fuzzy with it as well, is just a deep desire to feel heard and seen and recognized, for connection. And with these despicable people, or these people that don't align with us, what kind of bridging gap we have in being able to find a connection with them? There's no peace in trying to further distance from each other.
I think Nick keeps coming back to something here that resonates with where I've arrived at in my life, certainly as a higher ideal. In the second paragraph, he says, I guess in general, I don't find people despicable or deserving of hatred and contempt because as far as I can see, people suffer. Now, that is something, suffering and grief is something he keeps coming back to, and I think keeps talking about being one of the hubs of life that then a lot of our connectivity should bolt onto. And that's, maybe that has come to him and to me with age and time, just to find other commonality with people in bigger things rather than all the little divisions of political opinions or, religious opinions or whatever else might be, but this common ground of grief and suffering, as he puts it again. What do you think?
Absolutely. The line, I'm not sure if I'm jumping ahead for us, but that's what I do. The line that stuck out the absolute most for me in this whole thing is suffering lies beneath our most destructive behavior. And I know that to be so true with anyone. And people that say really outrageous things or hold really old school views that don't align with the new world, it's because they're suffering in their own ways. And I don't think it's necessarily because they're bad, evil people, but it's how their worlds have been coloured into the point where they are today, which is where that destructive behaviour comes from. And if they're finding some connection, if I could speak on Nick's behalf right now, if they're finding some kind of connection in his music in that time, if he's something to something else other than their own thoughts, political opinions, like a feeling, then who are you to take that away from anyone?
Yeah.
Like true connection from people.
Yeah. That's the only other thing I wanted to speak about was music. But before that, I had a little bit of fun. I printed something off when I first read this question, speaking about a High Court judge. Actually, what does Justin say? It's a Supreme Court Justice. But it reminded me of the Smith song, "The More You Ignore Me, the Closer I Get." I think that's the title, where he says, beware, or he sings, beware, I bear more grudges than lonely High Court judges, which made me then think about how David Cameron, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, some little space of time back, in Parliament, there was some volleying at the net between the two major parties, and David Cameron had claimed himself as a bit of a Smiths fan. And let me just now, maybe Morrissey and Marr are a little angrier, a little more indignant about their music, but just for fun, David Cameron said, as someone about to enter the political, this was, he was having a shot at the Labor leader, Jeremy Corbyn, and he said, as someone about to enter the political graveyard, Cameron said, perhaps I should misquote my favourite man and say, let's meet at the cemetery gates. And then in return, Kerry McCarthy from the Labor side said, if the Prime Minister is going to dig out his copy of the Queen is Dead album, he might wish to depress himself even further by listening to my favourite track, I Know It's Over. Although as far as the Labor Party is concerned, there is a light that never goes out. And they went on and on. They were backwards and forwardsing. And of course, Morrissey and Marr, quipped something in turn. Marr tweeted, David Cameron, stop saying that you like the Smiths. No, you don't. I forbid you to like it. And Morrissey then was just really attacking the irrelevance of David Cameron and the party and, such things, which we celebrate and like. But just in stark comparison, Nick says, comparison to I forbid you, Nick has written in the letter to Justin, in regards to ownership, I don't feel I personally have any real claim over my songs. I feel they belong equally to those who love them. Ah.
Well, I do like the idea. Like, as an artist, you create and you send it into the world. It's not yours to control anymore. And that's the vulnerability, the dread, you can't have control as soon as you want to send it out. Otherwise, keep it in your own personal journal forever. Yeah. And then you'll always have control over the narrative. But things evolve and change. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that. It's like some daggy politicians are into it. And like the Smiths don't represent what they did in the 80s. It's no longer about cool boys with like floppy hair wearing, I don't know, brogues or something. Like the Smiths is now like an older dad band. Sorry.
well, that's...
It's true. That's what happens.
That's what happens.
You'll never forever be that band. Like, you can't be that forever. So just accept how people will take it.
You can just become bitter and twisted about it, which...
And that they do.
Yeah. So you think it's kind of like take the boy band approach. Reach out, grab the butterfly, bring it into your heart, and then let it go again.
Let it go.
Okay. Well, there's some advice to you, Mr. Ma, who we love. We must say, Hannah and I are big Smiths fans. Are you still a Smiths fan? Or are they just a dad band now?
I am a Smiths fan, but I have actively chosen to ignore whatever has been going on in the last few years. I haven't listened to what that discussion has been because I didn't need to spoil it like the way other musicians have been spoilt for me
Yep.
the past few
Okay.
years.
All right. Yeah, we're just talking about Morrissey's controversial ways, which
Yeah, I know it's there. I literally couldn't tell you anything that happened,
Yep.
and I've very selectively chosen.
Well, look, we like the idea of letting go, but maybe Ma was just containing a couple of people. Well, but maybe it's just a couple of people. Maybe he was actually just having some fun with it. Maybe he was just, a bit of a verbal pugilism himself, wanted to box it out with the Prime Minister through a tweet, as so many do.
I mean, if you've got the spotlight, enjoy.
Yeah. All right. We still love you.
To take that from him.
We still love you, Mr. Ma. All right. So on to the other part, which is about music. He does talk a little bit about the sacred place that music has. And I like the line, sort of jumping back a bit here in the letter, where he talks about this is its rightful, this is music, its rightful and sacred duty. Music makes us do better, be better. It helps release us from our suffering and points us towards the good. It's a high and noble attribute to crown music with. What do you think? Do you think that's true for you and for most?
I do find music a very important part of how I process the world. Like, I think to every stage, story, and adventure in my life, all the big ones, I've got soundtracks to them, songs that were present in them that completely shaped those spaces. So whether they're forces for good, I'm trying to think specifically if a song has been a force for good in my life. However, they've always been present in my life in times where there's forces of good.
Sometimes the force for good is just helping you even grieve.
That's true.
If it's a breakup, if it's a disappointment, if it's something to be elated about or to bring hope. I think we've all got songs that we go to or we've seen others go to.
What's the grieving song for you?
Oh, a grieving song.
Yeah. Or a song that was like part of a very important transformational time. That's the Byron and me saying that.
Actually, I'll tell you something that was transformational. When I was 15, a great friend of mine, Clive, I was scratching around. I knew that I wanted to not be I didn't want to listen to what I heard on the top 40. And he pulled out this tape, and on one side of the tape he had Iggy and the Stooges, and he played it. He's playing me a lot of things in this tape deck. And I was like, oh, yeah. And then he turned around the tape and dum, 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 dum. It's time the tale were told. Reel Around the Fountain by the Smiths to bring them back in, to reel them back in. Played, and the moment I heard it, there was all this lush language that was moving through me. And when it got to the end of it, I made him rewind the tape like you do and play it again. And then he's like, do you want this? And I was like, yes, I want it. And I went home and played, the Smiths every 4 times to one of the Stooges. But that album on the tape, that was just a home recording over and over and over. And in less than a week, literally in less than a week, I had a different haircut. I had different clothes. Remember I bought these Doc Martens when nobody had them. There was like one shop, Union Jacks. owned by this old boxer, and there were these punks that worked down there in this dungeon. And anyway, my life was changed. I was out, going and seeing live bands. You could sneak in easily back in those days. So everything changed through the connection to one song, and it was Reel Around the Fountain. So that is seminal, or even bigger than that word. It's pivotal in who I became and am. I can point to that moment. Yeah. How about you?
Mine's quite funny, the one that I can think of. But it was just as I was shaking off a couple things, and Ariana Grande released Thank You Next from her Thank You Next album. And it was like the line, what she essentially is doing is she's going through all her exes, and at the end of it, she says, like, thank you for all of it, next.
Right.
Yeah, she's so great. She's like, is so grateful for all of it. And instead of, it kind of changed me, because I was like, I love Ariana Grande, by the way. Like, we'll never, ever not love Ariana Grande. I think it's very surprising to people to find out how much I love her.
Huh.
I do. Saying it loud and proud.
The Pocket Rocket.
She, it just changed my perspective. Like, I don't have to be grumpy and angry and annoyed when things aren't working out and things don't fall your way. You can just say, thank you for that time. On to the next.
And thank you.
And which is very much what I do. I don't really hold on to anger for very long at all. Part of the emotional process, but I move quick.
So thank you, Nick, and thank you, Justin, and thank you, Ariana, and thank you, Nick. We've covered it all. I don't know whether we've solved the mysteries of who owns music. You get to decide if it's your art, but I groove with what Nick said. Any final comments, Hannah?
Thank you, next.
Yeah, thank you, next. I do want to reach out and say thank you to Steve, our producer, who's actually sitting over there. Thank you, Steve. We appreciate your fine work that you're doing with us here. And of course, can't end it without saying like, subscribe. We have our podcast on basically most of the platforms. You can go to YouTube if you want to watch this. And if you want to reach out to us, perhaps you might like to be a guest sort of commenter with us one day on the show. Go and find us on Red Handophiles on Instagram. You could message us there or send a carrier pigeon. I don't know. Do they still use those? Maybe.
Absolutely. Talk to us. Talk to us.
Yeah. But okay, that's it for us today. Bye from me. Bye from Hannah.
Bye, friends.
And we'll talk soon.